Welcome to Rafting with Kailee, and today we are at the Aire Factory here in Idaho, and we're about to go talk to Alex, who's their marketing director. So we're going to talk about her experience on the river, and let's get to it.
My name's Alex Aldecoa. I live in Boise, Idaho. I work for Aire Whitewater. I'm the marketing director. I've been boating pretty much my entire life with my family and friends. I was a guide on the Middle and the Main Salmon, and then now I get to boat with all of my friends here at Aire.
How do your core values drive you in the outdoors?
Ooh. I think core values is what makes anybody, and so if you have good core values, it's going to help with your choices in the outdoors. I know personally, running technical water or backcountry skiing or any sort of activity I do, I always try and make sure that I'm making smart choices and that I feel comfortable in the decision that we're making. I think a lot of times, especially in industries dominated by males, you lose your voice, and I think obviously it took a long time to find my voice in these situations, but making sure that I feel confident and comfortable.
What is it about valuing emotional intelligence that is so critical to women's success in the outdoors?
I think overall, women, maybe I'm speaking too broadly, but I personally feel like if I'm not paying attention to my emotions, I can get myself in a situation where I'm then not comfortable, and then I'm constantly anxious or, get done, and I wouldn't say regret, but you have that kind of that block in your chest where you're just kind of oh, I don't like that, it didn't feel right. I think, I wouldn't say lead with emotion all the time, but I think being in tune with how you feel is important. I think I said it in our last conversation, just the fact that physically we're not as strong as males. I would love to say I was as strong as some of the boys I paddle with, but I'm not 100%. And so I think making sure that you feel comfortable and confident is important. And just following what feels right to you, I think is best, rather than muscling through it and just sucking it up to get there. Obviously, I did a lot of sucking it up to get where I'm at, and as I've gotten older, it's changed. But I think being able to read situations in a different way is helpful. Obviously, I read water a very different way than a male does, because he can muscle through things and I can't. And so I think a lot of my experiences come down to intuition as I got older, and it's if something doesn't feel right, I should probably ask the question, even if it's a hard question to ask. And just make sure everybody's comfortable, because even sometimes I feel like it takes one person to just say something, and then others who feel that same way will kind of speak up at that point.
What traits in yourself do you believe allowed you to achieve success in the outdoors?
Things that have helped me be successful, specifically when paddling or in the outdoors, I think is being confident and finding that confidence. And I know I've said that 8,000 times, but I think that's super important, as well as probably caring and understanding, making sure that you might feel fine, but somebody who doesn't have your experience, or maybe who has never camped before, needs somebody to kind of hold their hand to help them get through the tough times.
Where would you like to see female paddle sport athletes in 5 years?
Obviously, I'd like to see more of them. There's quite a few of us already, but I think increasing that stoke and getting more and more involved would be wonderful. I'd like to see them have a bigger voice or a bigger following, I guess is the better way to put it. You know, once they have that bigger voice or that bigger following, that in turn, you know, brings more people in younger. And I think what you guys are doing with kind of starting the junior team, I think is huge. And I think that will help the females in our industry. And I think that'll help grow it 5 years, to be honest. Yeah. I just think I'd like to see more of them, and I'd like to see them be more active within the community. I mean, I would like to see myself be more active in the community if I'm going to really call anybody out. But yeah.
It's hard to take that step.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
then, you know, we had an idea and we're like, we need to just do this or it's not going to happen.
No, and it takes people like you guys that are willing to like do the work and push it and keep going and, you know, keep bugging the right people to get them to talk about it, to then be a part of it and things like that. So I applaud you guys for sure.
I think it's definitely a community effort.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
With our junior team, we have the girls that are between the ages of 14 and 16. What insight would you offer them if they were sitting here right now?
Ooh. Like keep pushing, keep going out and keep learning and keep finding that love of the river. I think always strive for more and strive to be better and strive to do the scary things and push yourself more than you think you can. And I just think it'd be beneficial for them to, you know, find that mentor that they admire and that they feel like they can learn from, and to not drop the ball, I guess, like make sure that they are trying to do more and, you know, not just shying away because they can't find that person, you know? So yeah, I think it's important to have people that push you, but also respect your like boundaries and your worries, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I was laughing because I was like, I did the same exact thing
You're
this
right.
winter.
It's like, oh my gosh. I went to Alaska with a friend and there was an earthquake and then they were blasting all morning, right? So we had a pretty decent earthquake where I thought I was panicking a little bit. And then all you could hear is just them blasting at Alyeska for an hour. And then they opened the Christmas chute, which is crazy. It's just these two big rocks go down. You can't see anything. And you jump in and you do a couple of turns. And the ski patroller lets you go one at a time. And once your head disappears or the person in front of you's head disappears, he counts to 10 and then you get to go. I was like, oh my gosh, no, I'm not doing this. And the whole time they're like, oh yeah, stay away from the blue marks because that could be holes. And then there might be some other holes that we didn't mark, so try and just stay in the middle. You're just like, what? And you're standing there and there's probably 30 people waiting because everybody's in a line. It was scary. And it was, by the time I got through the chute and down to the bottom, I was excited and happy that I did it, but I was so pissed when we ended up over there and you're just staring down at this thing that's like this. I'm like, oh, okay. But then you also watch like a little 8, 9-year-old that's crying do it, and then you're like, well, I guess I have to do it, right?
There's a really similar chute where they can only see and then they count and there's a whole line and you're like, if I go too slow, there's going to be another person on top of me.
It's like all I could think about. And of course, like when we did it, I had my touring skis on because we were like, we're just doing groomers just to warm up before we go on a hike. And then they opened it, so it was kind of like you just go so that you're not the 50th person in line. I think I was probably maybe like 15. I was like, oh my gosh. So I dropped in and for some reason my heel popped out, but my pins didn't open. Have no idea. So I'm like on my second turn, like trying to shove a heel back in and all of these people are above you. Or like, nice skis, she probably should have had something different on. And I was like, well, I didn't have time to go put my powder skis on. Like, was not expecting the chute to open. So it was just, the panic. And then you get through and you get to a spot where you're like, okay, I'm going to take a breath. And then, you watch like 4 or 5 people just dive bombing down. And you're like, oh my gosh. But I think, yeah, just being with somebody that's going to push you it's good as long as you have your voice and you have your boundaries.
How would you guide a young female boater to maximize her potential in the outdoors?
To be a resource, I think, is the biggest thing. Be there for them and encourage them to ask the questions, to not be shy about it, to help guide and teach them to feel confident in their skills and obviously go with them. Don't just tell them, but show them and be able to be there and help them. If a mistake is made, help them understand why it was a mistake, what they could do different. I think the biggest thing is overall just show them it's not as scary as it seems, as long as you understand and are confident in your skills and willing to do the scary stuff to make yourself better.
How does that play out for future generations of women going forward?
I think the more women you have in the sport helps younger women, have these idols to look up to. I mean, growing up, I had Mia Hamm and Brandy Chastain and all of these soccer women, because that was the sport I was into, that helped you be like, oh, I want to be like them. And I think it's important to get more women, not necessarily recognized, but showing up consistently in this sport. Obviously, you have a lot of female kayakers that are pretty big and well known, but I think in the rafting community, it's not as known. And so I think, showing young girls, especially with the team that you guys are trying to starting, I think it's important because it helps everybody feel like, oh, I can do that. I can be, like her. And I think the more females, if they have kids of their own, they're more apt to bring them along earlier and get them started earlier because, not necessarily in my situation, but, somebody who enters into the sport when they're 20-ish, and then it's as they grow up, if they have the kids of their own, starting your child out earlier is kind of a trend because you want them to love it as much as you do.
What did you, as a young woman getting into the outdoors, need from a female role model? Did you have one? And then what did that look like, or what would that ideally look like if you did not?
We spent a lot of times in the outdoors growing up, for sure. We always had our dad. Our mom, I don't remember camping with her as much as with my dad, or, we'd always raft with my dad. But as I grew up and kind of started doing it on my own, I learned to row. I was fortunate that I really, truly learned to row from women. I learned the basics from my dad and other men and things like that, but I really learned to row from this great girl named Allie Rude. She's the coolest girl I know. And obviously people don't get that experience, and I was fortunate enough to be able to experience her as well as others who kind of taught me that it's okay to not be as strong as that guy over there, and that I need to be confident in my skills and read the water and use it to my advantage. That's specifically in rafting. I think if I could have had more of a female mentor when it comes to more climbing or skiing or mountain biking and things like that, I think it would have been a little bit more beneficial because you feel like it helps you build your confidence quicker. And it allows you to ask the question, like the tough questions that you don't really want to ask a guy. You know, and I feel like they're more willing to be a little bit more patient as you learn and struggle a little bit. I know in mountain biking, it's very different when you get to go with a girl or females in general, where, you know, it's a group of ladies and they'll wait for you at the top, you know, as some guys will, and then others will. You get to the top and they're like, okay, see you, and they start the next climb, and you're like, I need a couple minutes. But I think it's good to have mentors of both male and female, because I feel like the males will push you to get tougher, quicker, stronger, faster, better, faster. And females, they will teach you the technique and the tricks, and will help you through some of the tougher times. But also, if you get a great one, she'll push you to be just like her, to be rad and cool and do all the fun stuff. And so yeah, I think you need both, but I think it's important as a female to have a strong woman or somebody that you respect, that you can look up to and kind of follow and use as a resource.
What are some techniques that you might have when you might be feeling it one way, but you know you have the skills to do it, and building that confidence in yourself to face that challenge that you might not necessarily want to take, but know that you feel out of your comfort zone?
I mean, it's always good to do scary things. It's terrifying, 100%, but it helps you grow as an individual. Going with people better than you, I think has helped me grow. You learn new techniques, you learn different styles, you're able to figure out how to communicate with different people. It pushes you to build your skill set a little bit quicker, especially a sport that I enjoy that I'm not the best at, I would say skiing. And so, you know, touring in backcountry where you're hiking up these mountains and you're skiing with people that ski race their entire life, you know, and you have to kind of keep up. And I learned last year a couple of different times, they put me into situations where I knew they were 100% safe. You're looking down these chutes and you're like, there's no way I'm going down that. And you went because they already went and you didn't want to get left behind. And so I think the hardest part is taking that next step. But I think if you don't do it, I don't think it's necessarily a regret, but it's a step that didn't push you to become better. And I think as hard as it is, the scary stuff is what makes you better. Which seems crazy. I mean, as long as you know it's safe. I mean, there's whitewater that scares me every time I'm on it. Or before every rapid, I feel like I have to pee every time. And then you run a class 4 rapid, and then you're done, you're like, oh, I'm fine. It's like, I mean, there's rapids on the Middle Fork and the Main that every time I run them, I get nervous. But I've run those rivers so many times that I know exactly how to run them. And you get done, and you're like, oh, no big deal. That was fine. But, yeah, doing the scary stuff is what helps you grow. That's my opinion.
So having kind of like a mentor with you to help you at least the first few parts, and then just relying on your skills that you have.
Yeah, like trust in your skills and your judgment for sure. And then I think it's beneficial to be with somebody that might be better than you, or maybe they're the same skill level, but they have that confidence in doing the big jump, or, you know, let's take a rowdier line in this rapid. You know, let's go surf that little spot. You know, I'm a safe person, so I usually take the safe lines. So it's fun sometimes to paddle with coworkers, especially that, no, we're going to take the rowdy line. And they just kind of push you to do it, knowing that if you swim, you're popping right up and you'll be fine, you know? So, yeah, I think it's important to have people that push you, but also respect your, like, boundaries and a couple years ago, a group of us ran Hell's Canyon, and it's a group that, you know, we've run the Middle Fork, we've run the Main, we've done a lot of things together, so we're all pretty comfortable. And I remember we walked up to just scout both the big rapids on Hell's, and I think we were above Sheep Creek. And, you know, I kind of was not saying a whole lot because I run it very differently and just wanted to make sure we were all kind of going in the same direction. And one of the guys kind of walked past all of us, and I made a comment. I was like, which way are you running? Just because he didn't look for very long, right? And he told me, he's like, oh, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And I said, oh, when you get down to the bottom, make sure you point that bow at, you know, 10, 11 o'clock, because there's a lateral behind that big wave that you can't see that could take you out if you get too far to the left. And he was like, what? No, there's not. And I was like, you can't see it, but I promise you it's there, you know? And then so then the other guys were like, well, how are you running it? And I use the water more than my strength. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to pull into this little slack water spot, and then I'm going to back this, you know? And then we got through the rapid, and the first guy goes, I'm really glad you told me there was a lateral, because he did get a little far left, but nothing scary. But at least because he squared up, that lateral took him where he needed to be. And so I was glad in that moment that I said something, because nobody likes to flip a boat back over, especially fully loaded with gear for 4 days. So it was good. I mean, he's a great boater. I'll never say anything bad, but it was just comical that I made a comment, and then it was kind that he at least acknowledged that I was right. It sounds terrible, but I think, you know, as hard as it is, finding your voice is important, male or female, and then following just your gut and, you know, paying attention to how you feel.
How do you think you would find your voice in the outdoors, and how would finding your voice in the outdoors translate to other parts of your life?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think in general, finding your voice is hard. I think it takes a lot of time to feel confident in the sport you're in or the situation you're in. Obviously, in the outdoors, it's a little bit harder unless you feel comfortable. So, like, if I'm out with a pile of girls, I probably will say a heck of a lot more than I would if I was out with a pile of dudes. But I think the more experience and the more that you trust yourself and you trust your instinct and your gut, I think your voice kind of finds its way out. I mean, especially like backcountry skiing, you know, you dig and you check and you do all of the right things, and there might be something saying, I don't feel comfortable, you know, but, you know, one or two of the guys that you're with might be like, oh, we can do this, it'll be fine, you know, and then making sure that they understand that you're not comfortable. And I think overall, like, finding your voice helps you in any situation. At work, I mean, you need to stand up for what you believe. It helps you get to new places, if that makes sense, if you're not willing to speak up or if you're not willing to fight for that next job or that promotion or, you know, give your input, you might get kind of lost in the crowd a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of some themes I'm hearing are, you know, really digging into those hard skills and getting comfortable with that so that kind of gives you the information to go off of to help you make those decisions. Does that sound?
Yes. I think the more confident you are in yourself in the situation, the better. Obviously, the confidence takes time, and I will 100% say I'm not always confident. But I think trusting your gut and following your instincts and speaking for yourself and making sure people understand it's okay to be nervous or scared or hesitant of a situation. As long as you voice it, then you can have a conversation with whomever to make it better or see, you know, how to make yourself more comfortable and confident.
So kind of on that topic, but a little bit kind of shifting back to not only your personal experience, but your work experience. How do you believe we should be elevating women in paddle sports from maybe a business perspective?
That's hard. So obviously, COVID's helped a ton to get new entrants in paddling in general. We've seen the growth in the paddle sports industry. It's been exponential the last year and a half, 2 years. And with that being said, there's been a lot more females entering in, which is great. It's definitely harder to market to females in our industry a little bit because it is such a scary sport per se. But I think allowing or giving more resources, or there's social media has been wonderful for females in paddling industry, just because there's so many different support groups, essentially, like whitewater, ladies only whitewater groups that you can belong to, and you can ask the question of, hey, this is what I'm going to go paddle this river. Can anybody give me some feedback, what they thought, or hey, is anybody paddling this river tomorrow? And then you can meet up with others, that potentially could be a skill level above you, but are willing to help you get there. Or I see a lot of questions on what life jackets are you wearing, just because some of the women specific ones, you wonder, like, should I be getting just a normal unisex one, or should I getting women specific, or what ones fit you best? How are you comfortable? Things like that. I think in general, paddle sports, I think we all need to do a better job at making it more inclusive, if that makes sense. But I think there's been huge steps in the last few years to show women that they're welcome and that they can do it. And there's plenty of people that are here and willing.
We hope you enjoyed this interview with Alex from Aire. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. Aire's contact information is also below if you have any questions for them. And we will see you next time on Rafting with Kailee.